belong to me. Everything we are and used to be is buried and gone. Now it's my turn to speak.
The views expressed on the following broadcasts do not necessarily reflect those of KHLT, Take 12 Radio, or our affiliates. The opinions on this show should not be considered as medical, psychological, or professional advice and are those of the host, co-host, and guest. Take 12 Radio and KHLT Recovery Broadcasting are not affiliated with any particular 12-step fellowship.
Welcome to Entitled to Overcome, Exploring Solutions for Life Today, a presentation of Take 12 Recovery Radio. And now, here are your co-hosts, Dave Fleming and the Monty Man.
Rocking out with Dave Fleming on Entitled to Overcome Solutions for Life.
Monty.
Today.
Monty. Man.
So if you want to talk to me through the intro, you can do that because your mic is muted at the time. He's writing me notes, sign language, things like that.
I was just writing myself a note.
Oh, were you?
Yeah.
Well, welcome to Entitled to Overcome Solutions for Life today with Dave Fleming and the Monty Man.
Hello.
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 Hello. Oh, my goodness sakes.
Oh.
Gee, Willikers. Well, you're going to love the icebreaker this week. Before we do that, though, let's tell the customers. I almost said customers. Let's tell the listening audience what the topic is this week, Dave.
Today's topic is...
Get closer to your mic.
What is today's topic? Topic is contentment.
Not
Ooh.
condemnment.
No, not
Contentment.
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 What does contentment mean?
Being content.
Being happy and satisfied and...
Reminds me of a bunny that I had that was stuffed. I mean, it wasn't a dead bunny that was stuffed. It was a toy bunny that was...
That's a whole nother...
yeah, but it was just so happy. It just sat there and it was furry and fuzzy and I held it and I felt good. I felt content when I had my bunny.
I liken that to when I'm sitting at home in my big, like, oversized recliner,
Right?
that I got.
Yeah, I got one of
It's
them.
big
Yeah.
enough. I could put one pup on one side and the other pup on the other side.
Yeah.
And they're content,
Aw.
just sitting next to me and chilling out.
Being
That's what
with
I see when I hear the word contentment. That's what I picture in my mind.
being with the vid.
Hanging with the vid.
Hanging with the vid. All right, so do we have an icebreaker? I think we do. Yes, I do.
Well, it's time for
Ahoy!
Dave and Monty's Icebreaker!
Ahoy!
Shards of glass everywhere. Watch where you step.
Let's get the broom.
You're going to love this.
Get the broom.
Dave's sweeping up the imaginary ice. Have you ever dropped ice and it sounded like that? Usually it just sounds
No.
like clunk.
That
Clunk.
sounds like broken glass.
It doesn't it?
That I've heard quite a few times.
Aberdeen, South Dakota. Ever been to Aberdeen, South Dakota?
Actually, no. I've driven through North Dakota.
Have you? Well, it's pretty easy to miss. There's only 30,000 people there in Aberdeen, South Dakota. But there's a donut shop.
Of course there is. And it's also the post office.
Yeah, probably.
The,
Right? Well, this was sent in by Stan the Man. That's what his email says, Stan the Man. So, hi, Stan the Man.
what's up, Stan?
This is great. So, a man parking his car, which, by the way, the car was stolen, Dave,
Another car stolen
Yeah.
story, huh?
decided to utilize the automatic parallel parking feature. You know, when I started to read this, I started cracking up. It's like I am now because I knew something bad was about to happen. As he carefully parallel parked, hands-free, between two vehicles in front of an Aberdeen donut shop. As it were, the donut shop was the type where you served yourself and then paid at the register. Well, guess what he didn't do? Jason P., 34, picked out his donuts, placed them in the white pastry bag, and proceeded to walk out the door without paying, which turned out to be something that you just do not do.
Okay, that maybe it was
Yeah,
too much.
I knew that was going to give you a funny. So he walked out without paying. When he attempted to leave his parking space, the Yotto parallel parking feature had somehow caused the car's steering to fail, and Jason was unable to drive away. Then, to make matters worse, the doors of the car locked by themselves, as apparently OnStar,
Big brother.
yeah, OnStar had located the stolen vehicle and disabled the car entirely. Perfect timing for the two plainclothes police officers that were, guess where? In the donut shop to apprehend poor Jason.
You know, those whole, you know, the what do they call it? The automatic parking.
Right?
That and autonomous cars. I mean, come on. To me, that is just the greatest invention of an alcoholic.
Isn't it?
Right?
Yeah.
Because I could just get hammered and
Right.
sit in the back seat and tell my
yeah.
car to drive home
Sure.
and then park itself.
Yeah. And then if you got pulled over, you weren't driving.
That's right.
I wasn't driving. The car was driving. Well, you've heard people in their stories in AA and stuff say, well, the car just pulled into the bar. I had no control over it. Well, maybe it did.
That's called being delusional. When you're sitting behind the wheel. Yeah, that doesn't work.
So
But if you're in the back seat, I can see where that might be.
So did you see my post on Facebook about the car going down the freeway?
Sorry, I did not.
Well, Tesla, amongst, I think Lincoln has it now. Cadillac, I think, may have it now. And a couple other cars. But Tesla was one of the first ones to have it, where it keeps your car aligned as long as there's paint or reflective things in the road. So you can drive hands-free. Now, you're still supposed to be paying attention. But you can take your hands off the steering wheel, fold your hands, and just let the car go. And so here comes this Tesla yesterday. We're coming back from Salem. It's a 60-mile-an-hour zone in this one part, and this guy's going 75 plus. And he passes us. Now, Marcia's driving, and I'm in the passenger seat. He passes us, and she goes, look, look, look. And I look over. The guy is heads down. If you didn't realize what he was doing, you would have sworn he was asleep. But he wasn't. He was on his phone, right? So Marcia's honking and shaking her finger at him and honking. He doesn't hear nothing. Because I'm sure those Teslas are like totally soundproof. But he's in that thing.
He's probably listening to your show.
He's probably, what's wrong with this knucklehead? And anyway, he's going down. So as he sped off, and I mean, he was going fast, right? I took a picture of his license plate, and I posted, another driver on his phone. And I didn't even realize it was a Tesla until somebody remarked on social media that it was a Tesla. And then I blew it up. Somebody says, well, how'd you take the picture if you were driving? And I'm like, no, my wife was driving. Well, how'd you get so, why were you on his, butt, basically is what they said. And I go, wasn't. That was my zoom lens on my iPhone 8 Plus. Nice camera. And I was able, because he was quite a ways away, and I was able to zoom and get a crystal clear picture. But there you go.
So was he hands-free while he was talking on his phone? Was it the car driving on its own?
I couldn't see where his hands were, but he was not looking. He was looking down for quite some time, because we were in traffic, and at a point where he was going about 70, and we're how you're kind of forced to do that if there's trucks around. So I was able to watch him for probably a good 15 seconds. That's a long time.
So my question is why didn't you call 911? Well,
the reason, I did think about that. But how do you prove that? Now, if a guy's drunk, they're going to see him swerving all over the road.
You took a picture.
But I didn't take a picture of him on his phone. I took a picture of his license plate in the back of his car.
Okay.
I wasn't quick enough to grab a picture of him. If I could have, I would have. Now, anyway, there's the icebreaker for today.
Yeah, I once I got into my new life, chemical free, I've actually followed people. It's probably not the safest thing to do sometimes, but if I see somebody that obviously is drunk or under the influence of something, I'll call 911 and I will follow them and give them the license plate number and till they get on the phone and say, yeah, we got this, and I'll tell them which.
I've done that on several occasions.
My daughter's been with me, and she's like, Dad, this guy next to us, he looks drunk.
Yeah.
So, I mean.
Or asleep. People falling asleep. They're leaving all over the road.
Yeah.
Somebody needs to pull them over and wake them up.
Because, once I started my new life, I actually had to, follow through with my convictions and my values and my morals instead of just talking about it.
Well, I've sponsored men. And I've told them, chronic relapsers that I know are driving under the influences. If I know that you're using and I see your car on the road, I'm picking up the phone. Because my kids are out there driving.
Right.
My wife's out there driving. And, no, that's not acceptable.
Well, I always say, too, I kind of take that a little step farther.
Yeah.
I said, well, what if your wife or your mother or your child was walking across the street that day?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, there you go. Well, let's close out the icebreaker. You ready? Here we go. La 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 la. All right, we'll be right back after this. So go on.
Overcome.
And now, here's Pastor Johnny Baker for Celebrate Recovery.
Celebrate Recovery is for all of us because we've all been hurt and we've all hurt other people. We've all got things in our lives that keep us stuck and keep us frozen, things we wish we didn't deal with. And for many of us, we have these addiction issues that also just rob us of any joy or peace that we have in our life. The thing about Celebrate Recovery is that it's a biblical program and it's got 8 principles that lead us from one place to the next place over one day at a time after one day at a time. So we begin where we realize that we're not God. We come out of denial. We face our fears. We face the problems that have keeping us stuck. We turn our lives over to Jesus. We do things like taking a moral inventory of our lives and we look at all the things that we've done have been done to us to help us come out of that. We talk to other people about what's happening. Then, at the end, we serve other people because we believe that God uses our pain so that we can help other people when they go through pain.
To locate Celebrate Recovery in your area, visit celebraterecovery.com.
Well, you're in for a huge surprise because, well, it's not really that big of a surprise, I guess. It's back to Dave and the Monty Man. There you go. There you go.
That's right, Cecil. There you go. All right, Dave Fleming, C-A-D, C-A-B-C-D, F-G-H-I, what? Psst. Oh, what are you doing? Dave's not here. Dave. Open the door. Dave's not here. No, it's me, Dave. Dave who? Dave, you probably got a lot of that, right? Back in the day, Dave? All the time.
Remember that movie Space Odyssey or whatever it was called with the HAL 9000 or whatever?
Oh, yeah.
Dave?
I wouldn't do that, Dave.
What are you doing, Dave? Don't touch that.
I highly recommend you don't continue with that behavior, Dave.
We watched that in high school science class.
Yeah.
And as you can imagine.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, that went on for,
that was
years.
The only part of the whole movie of 2001 I even liked was HAL, the computer. Right. The rest of it just bored me to tears. I'm like, oh, I'm seeing a mirror image of a mirror image of a mirror image of a mirror image. How long can this go on?
Right.
20 minutes. All right. So I was not content when I watched that movie until it got to Hal the Computer. Then I got to laugh. But listen, here's some folks that evidently are very content after a really good Thanksgiving dinner. Check this out.
I'm full. Pops, you full?
I haven't been this full since Truman dropped the big one. Nana, are you full?
I'm as full as my purse. Becky, are you full? You know it, G-Ma.
Full does not describe the sheer amount of fullness I'm feeling right now. Billy, what about you?
I'm super full. Hey, it's Crazy Uncle Carl.
Hey, Billy!
Hey, Crazy Uncle Carl, are you full?
I'm crazy full. Hey, Scamp, are you full? He's full.
I'm fuller than Mom when she breaks her low-carb diet.
I'm fuller than Hawaii and the 3 states underneath it.
I'm so full I need Mom's maternity pants. Hashtag oh snap.
I'm full in my whole body. I'm full.
I'm so full, you're going to have to carry me out of here.
I'm as full as a ticket of blood bank.
I'm full.
I'm full.
I'm full. Full.
Hashtag FULL.
They're full, Dave.
Full of something.
They are full. They are content. They are happy. Well, maybe.
They didn't say they were content. They just said they were full, so.
Well, they were pretty happy. They were pretty
pretty crazy.
But if you get too full, then you become uncomfortable, and then you're discontent.
I was super discontent yesterday.
Were you?
Yeah, I put the pot roast in the crock pot.
Yeah.
When I went to work.
Yeah.
When I got home, and so I had roast and potatoes, and I had 2 servings of that. And I don't eat a whole lot of meat, red meat, and I don't know what it was, but it like sat in my gut. and then that was at 1 o'clock or whatever.
Yeah.
That was my lunch. And so later on, about 6 o'clock, my wife's like, "Yeah, I'm hungry. Can you throw a pizza in for me?" So we make this cheese pizza. I'm like, "Man, that looks so good." All right, and I was feeling okay. And then I had 1 slice, and I was about ready to
hurl.
Yeah. And oh my God, and it just all the rest of the night. I tried, all night long, and I was like, "Do I want to get up and pray to the porcelain god?"
Sure.
Or,
yeah.
Or just, suck it up. So I got up and I ended up drinking some baking soda.
Oh, yeah.
Trying to put out the fire.
Right.
And
right.
I ended up sleeping in the big recliner.
So you wouldn't
for the
lay
next
down.
couple hours. Yeah.
Well,
I felt good, okay this morning, but
you were
Lord.
you were not content. You were discontented. You were restless, irritable, and discontented. So you brought up this topic, contentment, and the question posed on social media was: is the grass always greener? Have you chased after something only to find out you were right where you were supposed to be? In other words, you already had pot roast, Dave. You don't need cheese pizza.
Right. It was one of those pot roasts that hung around.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was one of those. It was one of those topics. It hit me, and then I looked at it. Had the reference of Hebrews 13:5, and the NIV version says, "Keep your eyes free from the love of money and be content with what you have, because God said, 'Never will I leave you, never will I forsake you.'" And so it made me think of times where. Trying to always chase after something, trying to not be happy with what you got, not be content.
Mm-hmm.
And for those of us in recovery, or thinking back on our addiction, myself especially, always looking at trying to the old get rich quick schemes, and
sure,
I was gonna I had all these different things that I was going to do to make some money. And then I got into doing some real estate. I thought, oh, this is it. I'm going to become a millionaire, and I'm gonna go buy some fixer uppers and flip them, and retire when I'm 35, and that was the goal. And lot of things outside of my control came into play, and that didn't happen. A few other things in life that I thought was going to be a direction that, I was trying to get to the end of to get to the goal line as quick as possible. It's like, even in today's society, everyone wants to get rich quick without doing the work. They want to become basketball stars or football, players or musicians or something,
right?
Where they're gonna all of a sudden overnight become this multimillionaire, and then inevitably most of those people end up falling flat on their face, and then some of them pick themselves up, figure out, hey, I need to actually,
work my way up,
live the life, and learn some things along the way. It's kind of like on headstones. I don't know, this popped in my head. On headstones, you see the born date and the died date.
Yeah.
And then it's got that dash in between.
Right.
It's like we got to start like looking at that dash. What does our dash look like about living our life, and what does that look like? Are we happy? Are we content? Do we live a life worth living where we helped other people?
Did you ever try the multi-level marketing thing?
Yeah. I'm probably still involved in some of that a little on some level.
So I came home from work one day, and there was a guy in my apartment. Right now, I'd already told him no on the phone several times. He showed up at my work where I was a retail clerk. He showed up there, and I said, no, go away. He was somehow he had the landlord open up my door. He had a dry erase board in my living room, and he was trying to sell me on the American Way, which was the long version of Amway.
Gotcha.
Sucked me right in, man.
Did you notice if anything was missing?
Yeah, well, they didn't want to start doing that until about a month down the road, but they wanted to, every product that you had that wasn't Amway, they wanted me to get rid of. But I fell into this thing where I actually bought these photographs of these people's checks he had in this binder. This is how much this guy made. This is how much this guy made. And I asked him, well, how much have you made? Well, I made this much. I said, yeah, but how much of that did you keep? Because, well, I haven't got to keep any of it. I went, I'm confused. And I still fell into it. And I worked really hard, Dave.
Mm-hmm.
I never saw Zip. And then I did it again. I tried to sell Sprint phone cards. Then I did it again, and I tried to sell Cutco cutlery. And I went through this, I don't know how many different things, and it was all trying to accomplish greatness financially by doing the least amount of work. Because I was sold on the idea, and every one of these companies said, oh, you don't have to do a lot. Well, if you're going to be successful at that, you really do have to do a lot. But I believe that. So I had all these downlines, and I didn't do anything, and I didn't make any money.
Yeah.
And then it was everybody else's fault.
Well, and it's like, any kind of business, even if you're the supervisor, you have to participate.
You got to do it.
You have to, get your team fired up. And that's kind of like what multi-level marketing is. You have a team above you and a team below you. And if the team above you isn't feeding you and building you up, you're not going to do that for the team below you unless you're super motivated. And,
right.
And some
people do well with that. They do.
Yeah.
I'm not the guy.
It depends on the compensation plans too. And I think some of the companies are getting better than others. There's a few, there's one, I got into a nutrition company that the reason why I got involved with it, because I talked to some of the people that use the products.
Right.
And that were healed from cancer. And so I thought, and there were some other things that the products that I was familiar with that I knew were beneficial that could heal these, things that they like to call diseases. And so I thought, I can do this. This is pretty much would sell itself. But part of it is I'm the kind of, I'm not a very good salesman because I want to be able to, I have to be able to believe in the product myself. I have to actually use the product myself.
Right.
And test it out and see the benefit in it before I can be a salesman and say,
promote it. Yeah.
Because I can tell somebody else's story, but my passion isn't going to be in it. You
Right.
know,
That's right.
You're not going to explain your why. You know, right? They talk about multi-level marketing. Find out what your why, or any kind of life building skills is. What is your why? Why are you doing this? And my whole thing was I wanted to help people, but I also wanted to make sure that it wasn't something that, you know, didn't work, because I wasn't going to be the guy that's going to have the house party every weekend.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was kind of in my addiction still, and
Yeah.
I like to isolate.
Yeah.
So the thing about the easy part, like,
Right.
oh, you don't have to do anything, right?
Right.
You just point some people in the right direction. You have your sponsor here, Joe, to come over and demonstrate for you, right?
Yeah.
And then sign them all up, and then they
Right.
go off and do the same thing, and they sell all the products, and you make, you know, $10 on every one they sell.
Yeah.
Like, cool, I can do that. But that's not the way it works.
But then if they do what you do, which is nothing,
Then
and
you
then
get-
they do what you do,
Then all you get is doo-doo.
It's just a bunch of doo-doo.
So I mean, there's some other, you know, there's this travel company that I got connected with, and it's a great opportunity. And you basically you pay your, you know, your distribution fee or whatever, and then it's like a certain amount a month that you put into it, but then you get travel benefits out of it.
Right.
And since they buy these travel packages, they have the buying power. You can get these trips that usually would cost, say, $2,500 for $1,000, which
Right.
is a pretty good deal.
Sure.
Unless you don't have $1,000, then it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's a lot of good stuff out there, but
Well, you know, this scripture verse, it's interesting because it says, keep your lives free from the love of money. So let's dispel the thing about money's the root of all evil, because that's not what it says. The love of money, or you could say the love of your house or your car, your neighborhood, or your the person.
Right.
And be content with what you had. Why? Because God said, never will I leave you, never will I forsake you, which suggests to me that the ultimate prize, the thing that I really, really am hungry for and may not even realize it, is my fellowship with God. And if it's true that he'll never leave me and never forsake me, then what me worry, Alfred E. Newman? Right? I don't need to.
And if we're following the guidelines, you know, they're laid out in the Bible.
Yeah.
And in the 12 steps, we're going to find contentment, right? And balance and the promises, as the program says.
Sure.
Because we're living the life that we're meant to live.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And if we trust and we believe that God's going to provide for us, those opportunities are going to come. They may not be the way that we want them to or thought they were going to come, but they will come. And sometimes it can be, you know, not in our timing, but in his timing. And that can be a little, that can strain the contentment.
Sure.
You know?
Sure.
I'm going through some of that myself right now. And I can see where, you know, staying steadfast and pressing on is important, but it's also can be frustrating if things aren't moving the way that maybe I think they should move.
But when you lay your head down at your pillow on your pillow at night, can you lay your head down on your pillow at night and go to sleep?
Unless I got a like crink in my neck,
or you ate pizza and roast beef, right?
Well, yeah, I mean,
because some people can't, Dave. Some people can't. They toss and turn all night long because they're so discontented.
I used to be one of those.
Yeah, me too.
I think some of that was withdrawals, but that's a different.
That'll keep you up.
Yeah. About every 2 hours, you know, you get up and you gotta feed that beast.
Right. Right.
Squirrel. And sorting this out too is like trying to figure out what God's will for our life is can be a little taxing and confusing. I was just having a conversation this morning along these lines. When I first started out, you know, I was trying to I was praying and God was answering my prayers. Like I was like, this is a little weird because like all this stuff about prayer, it's like really works. God has answered every single one of my prayers, not in always the way that I would have expected or wanted it to.
Right.
But it did answer it. And
you recognize that.
And I recognized it because, my brain was clear. My head was clear. I was able to see. I was able to connect the dots. But there was, I remember a point when I was started doing my internship as an alcohol and drug counselor. And I wanted to work for a company that had a faith-based component. So I found this place and got in, and I started working there. And it turned out it wasn't, necessarily the only faith part about it was that the owner was a minister, and she would do a sermon on Sundays.
Okay,
that's about as far as it got. And so the person that was the men's director, his thing was 3 principles. I don't know if you're familiar with the 3 principles, but it's another, modality of working on recovery. And he the one time I remember he handed me an assessment. He says, you ever seen one of these? And I said, yes. We went through these last week in class. And he immediately cut me off and says, we don't talk about the past here.
Whoa.
Right? And I was like, huh? What? You just asked me a question. I answered your question.
Right.
Because part of the 3 principles is focusing on the here and now. Like not looking at yesterday, but focusing on the here and now and what we can do today. Which is great, but I believe that if you don't resolve the past, you're doomed to repeat it. So,
well, we don't regret the past or wish to shut the door on it, right? So it can be a tool.
But I thought, okay, and I kind of kept my mouth shut, and I was like, okay, whatever. And then this happened, 2 or 3 other times, and I'm like, Lord, help me out with this because I'm really struggling. I don't get it. I said, maybe there's something that I need to learn that I'm not learning, and I'm just not getting it. So I'm going to stick it out, and I'm going to, see what you have to give me.
Sure.
There was probably 3 or 4 other interns that went through the program. They were there for 1 day. I think
and they bailed?
2 days maybe, and then nobody ever stayed longer than that. I stayed for 30 days. Because I was determined to learn what God had for me. And basically what it was is this isn't the place for you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I moved on, and then the next place ended up being exactly where I was supposed to be.
Yeah.
And God literally did one of those, here's your sign moments.
Yeah.
Scripture that I heard coming out of my my blackout, and last night I had a drink, Mark 9:23. Jesus said, if you can believe, all things are possible.
Right, yeah.
We talked about that before, but that was right above the toilet in the bathroom. This is before I even talked to anybody. And I knew that was the place I was supposed to be. And everything went smooth. And when my interview was, why should we hire you? And I said, because I get it. That's the only thing that came to my mind. And they're like, okay, you can start Monday. So it was like, I don't know if that doesn't really necessarily be in, chasing the love of money. But my whole life has been about trying to chase the next thing that I'm going to make some money, right? I don't have to do much work. And so in this new process, I'm trying to figure out a way that I can, that money part of it is off the table. I've already resigned myself that that's not what's important.
Yeah. Amen.
But a number of times I thought, what the heck am I doing here? I need, let's go over here. Let's go over there. Let's, in the recovery community or in the addiction field, it's pretty much known that most people don't stay in any one position for longer than about 5 years.
That's right. Yeah, that's what I've been told.
And so, or 5 years in the business at all, and then they go somewhere and do something else because it's very taxing, or it can be. But yeah, there's been numerous times where the grass is always good. I mean, literally, like when we lived in Minnesota, the house next door to us,
right,
was the lady came over and offered to rent it to us for less than what we were paying for the house we were in, and so we threw all our stuff over the fence and moved in. But the whole basement was gutted because Her son was living there, and there was a bunch of damage. He never fixed it, and so
okay.
I just left it thinking, well, let's just try to buy this place, and we'll just leave it. We won't do any work on it, so then we get a really good deal, and then once it's ours, we can go and fix the whole thing up.
Mm-hmm.
Well, God had other plans for us, obviously, because here we are in Oregon now.
Yes, here you are. God knew you were going to do this show way before you ever even lived in Minnesota.
Right.
Things like that blow my mind.
It's, everything's already written out.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know about your life, but my life has been this straight line, right?
Mm-hmm.
Started here, and now this is where I'm at,
Mm-hmm.
right? Well, that's God's path.
Yeah, God has
My
a
path-
plan for your life. Doesn't mean God isn't developing some sort of treasure hunt for you. He has a plan already in place.
Yeah, well,
for you.
Being human and having free will and all that.
Well, we kind of take
I
shortcuts.
decided to do the
shortcuts that took longer.
Let's give something for our readers to kind of picture in their mind. Let's picture the United States.
Yeah.
And the straight line goes right through the middle of it, right?
Right.
Well, my journey to get from
point A to point B,
from say Washington, right, to Oregon, went all the way across the United States and back again about 7 or 8 times before I actually got to Oregon.
Wow, sounds like the children
Right?
of Israel, right? Trying to find the promised land. Around
Actually, we started in
and around.
California, so.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's kind of how my life has been, the zigzag across the planet.
Yeah.
Back to exactly where I need to go. So every now and again, I'd cross that center line, and we're like, "Oh yeah, this feels right."
Aren't you glad God is patient?
This feels right. You're right.
So what about we had some people respond to the question: is grass always greener? Have you chased after something only to find out you were right where you were supposed to be?
Lisa here, she says, I've been through 3 marriages because I thought the grass was always greener with the next guy and the next, and never was. The grass didn't get greener, get green and stay green until I discovered that my problem was emotional sobriety. In other words, I was a problem. I don't know how many times that I've come to that realization. I mean, that's kind of where I was, and that's how I came to the realization that I need to change. But thanks Lisa for writing in. That is so perfect, because we always think that it's somebody else or something else. It's if only, my thing was if everybody would just do things my way, everything would be fine.
Yeah, if all the actors on the stage would play the role I assigned to them, right. But see, we think we're the production manager, but they all think they're the production manager, and then you got a head-on collision, right?
Yeah, or you can use too many Chiefs and not enough Indians. That's another way of in the working world. That's what we've used, right?
Absolutely.
And Peter,
this one broke my heart.
It's one of those things, it's like go back and read what you wrote, Peter. I bet you can find the answer. Right? I can't seem to find where I fit. I go to AA and I don't fit. I go to NA and I don't fit. I hate church. I hate people because I just don't fit no matter where I go. The grass is never green, always brown.
Yeah.
The thing that jumped out at me is maybe, Peter, you got to work on hate. It's a pretty strong.
It is a strong
and
word.
I know exactly where you're at with that. That's kind of what I was saying about if everyone just do things my way, everything will be fine. It's like, what is wrong with these people? It's like I'm always feeling like, and this is indicative of most people in addiction at some point,
right?
Is being in a crowded room and feeling like you're all by yourself.
Sure,
right? It's that whatever it is that's going on inside of you, we just need to work on whatever that.
Can you still
issue.
feel that today? I do on occasion.
I do. It took me a long time just to get to some middle ground, and I just had to practice. Like I would go to one of my big things was the crowded room. So meetings, I would come late and sit in the back.
Yeah.
Church, I would come late, sit in the back row. Right. And as soon as the first note started playing, I'd be out the door. When the meeting was over, I was the first one out the door, right? I wasn't going to stand around and chit chat, or if anybody wanted to go have coffee or whatever, I was like, you're lucky I'm even at the meeting. And so I had to get to the point where if I wanted to grow and I wanted my life to change, I actually have to push myself out because, like we've said before, the only thing you have to change is everything.
Sure.
And if continuing to do what I'm doing is keep me stuck, and I want to grow, I need to push out of that. And so I started going to coffee after the meeting. And I started church. I started getting involved with small groups. And then maybe I would sit next to the soundboard because that's my comfort zone.
Okay.
Because that's my background, music, sound and lights, and all the production work. So that's my comfort zone. That's usually what I end up sitting is right next to the soundboard if it's on the floor. And so then I would sit in front of it, and then I would move. I'm closer. I'd move to like the front row of the second section, right? So there's another set of chairs before that in the church that we're at. And so then I'd kind of move around from the left to the right, just to, be up closer,
right?
To be engaged, but also, to kind of diminish some of that scariness. If I feel like I'm still sitting in the back row, and I can't see anybody behind me, then I'm good, right? And part of that is being, watching your back, the security, the criminal lifestyle. It's like you always got to sit in the back of the room,
escape route,
and watch all the doors, right? So you know who's coming and going, and the escape route.
So learning to be content, those things start to fall off, and you become less concerned about that, right?
They're always still there. They just are. They're not concerned.
You're not
anymore.
obsessed with them.
No. I mean, I still do the same thing in group. I put my chair at the opposite end of the room so that I can see all the doors, and so I can see who's coming and going in and out of the office. Which to me, it's just common sense, but it's still part of my old comfort zone behaviors.
Mm-hmm. What about when you go to an event and you know no one? Are you able to be content, or do you have to kind of pay your respects and get out of there?
It depends. It depends. Going and doing things. It depends. When I was working my recovery program intensely in the first 5 or 6 years.
Sure.
Well, it was probably more than that. The first 4 years, I was kind of doing it on my own, and then I got back together with my wife and my kids, and then I had that component. And my wife and kids didn't always want to be around me because they still had some of the past stuff in the back of their brain,
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to go and do things on my own anyway, whether or not they wanted to go or not, because I was also codependent, big time, and so my whole life was about my family. It was either we did stuff together or we didn't do anything at all. So there's a lot of times where me and my wife would sit around the house and just vegetate, watch TV, inevitably I'd end up drinking or whatever. But so I knew that I had to do the opposite of that. When we got back together, I still had to continue on with my recovery program, which was going to meetings, going to church. If my wife didn't feel like going somewhere because she had a hard day and she just wanted to chill, then that was okay. And we were both okay with that. And I just went and did my thing because I needed to do it. If there was an event, a concert or something that I needed to go to, I'd just go because that was part of my process of changing my life. But I still, to this day, I get uncomfortable. I was going to go to a good example as I was going to go to a wedding last week, and I didn't go. Because my wife wasn't feeling well, and it was going to be me and her and the other person that I work with. He decided he wasn't going to go, and everyone, I didn't know anybody except the bride, basically. Mm-hmm. And it just felt super uncomfortable. And I knew when I got there, I'd probably be super uncomfortable. I was like, I don't know anybody. And, it's just easier if I just send them a card and my apologies and just not show up.
I went to, and I'm like this to a certain degree, and people, it surprises people because they go, "Oh, you're such a social animal." Not necessarily. I went to a wedding up at Five Rock Ranch for, I'm Kyle Thompson, and this was almost 2 years ago, something like that. Anyway, I went up there, and I knew a lot of people, right? And I knew that I was going to see people that I knew. But it was outside of an environment that I usually spent my time with them in. The environment that we usually spent around each other was a work environment. Surprise, surprise, I thought that I just walked into an Eskimos training camp. I mean, they were cold and non-communicative, and they all knew how to communicate at work. They didn't know how to communicate outside of work. It wasn't that they were being rude. They just didn't know. And I'm like, wow. Gads. I mean, I try to shake people's hands. They looked at me like they'd never met me before. These are people I saw every day. And I became very uncomfortable. And instead of just kind of sitting back and fitting in, as soon as the wedding was over, I did not stay for the reception. I got in my car and I quietly drove off into the sunset. But I've been at other events where I knew that I wasn't going to know anyone. And I've done what you've done and decided, this isn't going to work well for me. And so in both cases, I was not content. I have not been content.
Right.
But some of this stuff, like we were talking off the air about, some things in life just are, right?
Yeah.
Some things are just uncomfortable because they are. It doesn't necessarily mean anything's wrong with you.
Right.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting what Nick M said. He's a firefighter. He's been listening for some time. He said, yes, early in my fire service career, I had transferred off to the company I was assigned to and went to another company only to find out that I really didn't fit in, and the problem I was leaving, which was a person, at the previous assignment was reassigned himself. God still brought good out of it, but it was a lesson about being patient and not trying to force situations. So he tried to leave, and it ended up the other guy did too, and now he's back in this situation, and then he went back. I mean, I don't know. Sometimes I think we spend a lot of time trying to find serenity and contentment and peace, and when it's there the whole time. It's kind of like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, right?
Right.
You could have gone home anytime you wanted to because you never left.
Well, and it's figuring it out, like, how do I go home?
Right.
Well, in those situations, you talk about being uncomfortable, especially like in a work setting.
Yeah.
Or, whatever, with a person. Sometimes it's just actually sitting down and talking to that person and getting to know them on a different level.
On a different level than just work. Or whatever.
I mean, that's what we teach our clients is like, if you're having an issue with somebody and one person is gossiping and the other person, and you're well, I think they're this and I feel they're that. It's like, well, do you really know that? Have you actually asked them? Have you actually talked to them?
Right.
And usually the answer is no. It's like, well,
yeah,
let's sit down
true.
And have that conversation and figure that out. And then usually, I just did this yesterday. Yeah, yesterday with with 3 guys.
Uh-huh.
And by the time we were done, it's like, we resolved most of the issues. And it's just a matter of people making assumptions and not really talking to each other.
Sure.
I mean, that's not always the case. I've been at places and work with people that are just jerks, and no matter what, they're still a jerk. And it's like, then I need, and what I learned now is like, it's how do I respond to that? How do I?
Yeah. Because there's always going to be those people,
right? If you respond to them, typically they know you're gonna, they're gonna push your buttons, and they're gonna keep doing it if you respond in that way. But if you just kind of ignore them or set your boundaries, they leave it alone.
Dr. Alan Berger, who you and I both know, he talks, and that's why I liked what Lisa said, because she used that term, and it's one of my favorite ones, emotional sobriety. Every time I hear that, I think of Dr. Berger because he's like the emotional sobriety guru. And, what he says about that is, and I think that really that's a lot of what we're talking about here with contentment, right? Is I am comfortable in my own skin regardless of what's going on around me.
Yeah.
And emotional dependency or discontentment is I'm not comfortable in my own skin unless what's going on around me fits my expectations. And even then, it's not enough. Right. You actually did what I wanted you to do, but you didn't do it quite right. And so he, one of the things that he's very proactive about is learning to stand on your own 2 feet, getting in touch with your authentic self, being mindful of who you are, and saying, you know what, this situation sucks, and I'm okay. Doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. Doesn't mean it isn't painful. But what are you going to do with it?
A lot of people struggle with that.
Well, I used to drink and use over the things that were painful. That's what I did with it. And when it wasn't painful, I'd drink and use. Because the sun was shining.
Yeah. It's intensified in a typical treatment center. It's always somebody else's issue, always somebody else's fault. I don't like this. I don't like that.
Well, and that's got to be rough because you work in an environment like that. So, I mean, now you got a bunch of guys that are in the same place, the same living environment. You talk about an opportunity to blame and shift and transfer and do all those buzzwords. It's there, right?
Every day.
Every single day.
Every day. Ding, ding, ding. Yeah, that's the challenging part and the rewarding part when they actually see the light bulb go on.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, how rewarding is that when you see somebody get it and then it sticks? That's got to be what a great payoff.
Well, I just want them to get it and start and plant the seeds. Where you hear that the proverbial, pop. We hear the pop, right?
Yeah,
as they say.
Yeah,
and that I mean, if I can get that, that's all I really care about right now. It's like I plant some seeds because reality is I don't care how long you're in a program in a facility. None of the stuff even comes into play until after you leave.
That's right. The real world.
When you get the real world that impacts you and you deal with the day to day and
yeah.
The pleasures and the struggles and give and take and all that other stuff that goes along with it.
So I guess my question to people would be, are you content? I mean, I've gone through days where I didn't feel content and discovered that I was actually a lot more, content than I thought I was. But it's comfortable to whine and complain, and I know that very, very well, and I can default to that because it's my friend, right?
Yeah. And I think what other things fall into that category. Contentment is self-awareness, emotional sobriety, right? Where you can look at those situations and say, this isn't the greatest situation, but I'm okay. It's okay. It has nothing to do with me, or it only affects me if I let it. And that comes with self-awareness and all that, emotional sobriety. And that's I'm hoping that's kind of the goal. Did
you ever have anybody tell you that when you were upset about somebody and then they'd say that old thing they do in 12-step groups? Well, what they think about you is none of your business. Anybody tell you that?
I've heard that, but I think it's a bunch of nonsense. Because
I got told that, and I thought, well, how can that be none of my business? They're talking about me.
Right. So wouldn't that could be considered gossip, right? If somebody's talking about you, but how do you?
But what are you going to do with it?
Right. Well, how do you change if you don't know? I mean, if someone is saying something, you're doing something that's bothering them or whatever, maybe it's because there was a time in my life where, I was told I was unapproachable, and when I came into recovery and I looked at the big picture and I'm thinking, why is that? That
why are you
I'm
giving
doing
that off?
good in my life, and I have serenity, and I still feel like I'm an outsider.
Yeah.
And I realize that when I move through a room, I'm go from point A to point B, and if I'm on a mission, and if there's a lot of people, sometimes I'll just buzz right through the room, and I get people come up afterwards and go, "Hey, why didn't you say hi? I waved to you. You just blew me off.
You were on a mission."
I'm like, I didn't see you. I apologize. And so that, how that things can spin off of that.
Go get emotionally sober. Leave me alone.
But I had to actually ask my pastors, because I got part of the worship and media arts ministry, and I said, I'm struggling with this. Am I doing something or saying something or body language or whatever that's putting out this message? And he shared some things with me, and then I worked on that, and things got a little better and a little easier. But just being aware what other people say or think about you is helpful. It may not be correct.
Yeah, good word. Good word. Yeah,
but I think if we have the information, we and we're in the right place to hear it, we can make those changes, or we can just say no, you're wrong.
So make it your business for the purpose of becoming self-aware and improving on your condition.
That's kind of like saying, well, I don't care what you think. I don't care what you say. It doesn't matter.
Which is a crock.
I don't
People
care.
always care.
Right.
Yeah.
And because that's what happened to me. And when I came to the rooms of NA, and, people gave me a hug and said, hey, I'm glad you're here. Or when I got a chip, it's like, I really appreciated when you said X, Y, Z, and you helped me get through this. And without I've never even talked to these people. And giving me a hug and saying, hey, thank you and welcome. I mean, that was the piece that I was missing. This is what I need. Mm-hmm. I want somebody to pat me on the back and say, hey, you know what? We're glad you're here, and you're doing a good job. Right?
So there's nothing wrong with affirmation.
I do care what people say.
You do care, yeah.
And I do care what they think.
So there's nothing wrong with affirmation. You need to be quick to give it and be graceful to receive it.
Right.
And it's okay to care what other people think.
And if it's negative and it doesn't have any meaning or truth behind it, then brush it off.
Yeah.
It's the other person's issue, not yours.
Yeah. Again, can you lay your head down on the pillow at night? Because, guys, I know...
I'm asleep in like 13 seconds. Ask my wife.
Are you really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Sometimes shorter.
Wow. And that's without any ZQL or anything, right?
Without anything, Yeah, and even with my blood sugar at a normal level, too.
Wow. That's a trip. All right, we are out of time. We have a closing song. Any closing thoughts, though, before the song?
No.
All right. And then after the song's over, we'll come back and say goodbye. And Dave will say goodbye, Dave, or something like that. The song is called Contentment, by the way. Anyway, it's by the Anointed Pace Sisters.
Doesn't matter what's happening around me, I'll rejoice in my brother's prosperity, 'cause I find contentment in you. Doesn't matter what people say, in spite of what bills I have to pay, I find contentment in you. Knowing you'll supply all my needs, and everything I need is in thee. I find contentment in you. Doesn't matter who walks out of my life, it's okay if I sleep alone at night, 'cause I find contentment in you. Knowing you walk with me, knowing you'll bear me on eagle's wings, I find contentment in you. In spite of what should have happened by now, there are no regrets. Somehow I find contentment in you.
The Anointed Pace Sisters kind of takes me back to Andre Crouch and the Disciples kind of era. Dave, it's time to say goodbye. Say goodbye, Dave.
Goodbye, Dave.
Goodbye, everybody. We're wishing God's perfect serenity for you.
This has been a broadcast of KHLT Recovery Broadcasting.